Is this the second time we're going to say in Premier League history that Tottenham have won the transfer window? We remember the first time that they won it, right? Remember the signings after the Gareth Bale sale to Real Madrid, and they signed a whole raft of players, and we all sat there and was like, "Oh my god! Like, look at the players that they've signed." And then they get Salgado in, and all of these kind of things. So yeah, obviously we've seen Spurs do this before in previous times. They've gone out there, spent quite a lot of money. I mean, they've spent quite a bit of money at this current moment in time. I don't think they're going to stop. It looks like, if I'm being honest, you're looking at maybe another £200 million outlay. I mean, Liverpool should be the team you should look at in regards to, yeah, when you spend that kind of money, the expectation levels from everybody rises to an incredible ceiling, right? So you do need to understand that, regardless of where you finish in the last couple of seasons, and obviously we'll talk about that, regardless of where your team's been at, regardless that these are all new players, and obviously you got a new manager towards the back end of last season. So again, regardless of all of that, the expectation levels now start to rise. So if you do not meet those expectations, just make sure you are ready to be ridiculed. And like I said, Liverpool should be the example for Spurs, at this current moment in time. Listen, these guys are businessmen. They understand the game a lot better than I do in certain aspects, especially the financials. So, hey, listen, they know what they're doing. Spurs know what they're doing. So I'm not really here to try and question that, so to speak. I'm just looking at it and I'm saying, listen, don't for one second think that you haven't signed some really really good players. Tonali, Mateus Fernandes, Van Heck, Robertson, Senesi. Those are four signings that they've made current, or five signings, should I say? Sorry, that they've made currently. In my opinion, these are very very good signings for a team like Spurs. Now, there's been a lot of talk, in regards to, I put out a tweet and I mentioned, hey, look, I think that midfield, if you're just talking about Tonali and Fernandes, in my opinion, it's better than Liverpool's midfield. I think better than Chelsea's midfield, or you can probably say on even footing, because I do like Moises Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez. Arsenal's probably not, because Declan Rice, Martin Zubimendi, Erdegaard. Yeah, no, I'll probably say they probably just about edge it. Who else are there? Manchester City. Obviously now, I don't even know what that midfield is. You've got Rodri, you've got no Bernardo Silva, you got Nico Gonzalez in there, you got Elliot Anderson. Maybe not Manchester City, actually, to be fair. I would say that their midfield is probably still better than Spurs, but Spurs are now pushing up there. Like I say, I'd say they're top two, top three, midfields in the Premier League at this current moment in time, and you're still talking about other players who are in there, like the likes of Maddison. Heck, who knows where Kulusevski's going to play next season if he's back ready and firing. I actually think he'd be better in a more central role behind a striker just because of his own abilities. But that's a conversation for another day, Maddison, kind of thing. So, yeah, I think I'm looking at that in terms of midfield, and I'm very, very impressed, with the business that they've done there. Yes, it's a lot of money. You're talking close to 200 million for a new midfield. It's the typical kind of Prem proven that ultimately these are the prices. Do I think that they're both worth these prices? No, not by any stretch of the imagination. I think both have been massively, I won't say massively, but they've definitely been overpriced in regards to how much I feel they probably are worth. But we've seen the market. We've just seen Elliot Anderson become the most expensive British player in history. Outdoing, I think it was Jude Bellingham. And are we going to say that, he's better than Jude Bellingham? Of course not even remotely close. So these are the kind of fees that we unfortunately are going to have to pay. So when people are looking at it, yes, of course, if we're just talking the actual outlay, yeah, the outlay is massively overpriced. But I think now we've got to start getting into our heads that this is just the new normal ultimately. So for any level of player, do you know what I mean? Yandy Monday is being quoted at over 100 million. He's not even close to that, so obviously it's the transfer market is the transfer market, ultimately. So I think when I'm looking at deals like this, Van Heck, I think absolutely, I mean, Roberto De Zerbi is one of my favorite managers, definitely a manager I think Liverpool should have gone for. I think he's a better manager than the one that they've currently got. I think then you're looking at the type of manager that he is, the football that he plays, absolutely brilliant. Getting in someone like Van Heck, Andrew Robertson. Listen, I still think Robertson is over the hill at this point, but if he's coming in to rotate with someone else, again, I think he's more of a context, I guess, when you're looking at Spurs, it's more about having the experience, the leadership, and all these kind of various different things that Spurs need. I think one of the tags that we all say with Spurs is that they're so Spursy. They do, you think, well, not even think because we know what they like, but they do things which makes you think, oh no, they're really going to be serious and they're going to challenge, as an example, as they did like years ago, or they're going to be a good team, they're going to play some good, and then they just Spursy. It's just, unfortunately, it's doctored into the history of the football club, especially in the recent history. Don't know where it started, don't know how it started. I just know since I've been alive, that's just been a thing, for Spurs, kind of thing. I think even Ange Postecoglou's even mentioned it previously. And again, that's something they need to get out of the system. And obviously, with how they finished in the last couple of seasons, there are a few players in that team. I just think that they're just not really, they're not players that you want at the club, even though I think some of them are good. So, for example, Christian Romero, I believe he's a player that I don't really want at my football club. He doesn't seem like someone who's really willing to really fight for the cause and stuff like that. He does strike me as someone who is relatively selfish and looks out for himself. But I mean, I don't know him. It's just, I guess, from actions and things you read about these kind of players. So I guess if they want to change that kind of perception of them, they're going to need to do something about it if they care, about that. And yeah, just a poor form of a lot of these players. I mean, I even look at Maddison. I think Maddison's a really, really good player, but his injury record has been absolutely atrocious. They should be looking at, listen, if you can't keep yourself fit, we're going to sell you. So you got a choice. Keep yourself fit or we sell you. We can't have these kind of players just continuously staying around and they're just there because of this one-time ability that you've seen. Kulusevski obviously had a mad injury, so he'll obviously come back in. But I just think with someone like Roberto De Zerbi, someone who likes to take control, someone who, likes to, I guess, do things his own way kind of thing, right? And it's going to rub people up the wrong way. I know it's going to do that at Spurs at some point in time, but I do think that this might be what they need, someone who's going to kind of go against the grain a little bit. And I think once they start doing things like that, maybe you can start to change that kind of perception of Spurs first and foremost. And then, moving forward, you'll be able to kind of, just, I guess, change it around, in regards to what Spurs are going to potentially be like, for the future. But yeah, as I said before, Tonali, Fernandes, Van Heck, Robertson, Senesi, these are the deals that they've done so far. Really, really good signing. So, like I said, I'm thoroughly impressed. I saw this as like a potential 11 that Tottenham may have next season. Obviously, the players that they have signed, plus the players that they've got at the moment, with a couple of different additions. Balogun, USA international, currently obviously at the World Cup. He's been a player that's been touted. Obviously, they've got Dominic Solanke, they've got Richarlison. Do I think that's good enough? No, I do think they need like a real killer in front of goal. And obviously, if Balogun's the one that they're looking at, I think he's a decent player. It would be interesting, I would definitely say the least, if they were to go out there and sign, a former Arsenal player first and foremost. But, just to go out there and sign him, especially with his development over there in France, I really do think he has developed into a very decent striker. And whether he can come and kick it at the Premier League, I don't know. I'd have to, I guess, wait and see in regards to that. Savinho, I think he's a player that they looked to sign before. Don't know what happened there with Manchester City, but I think that would be someone, again, you get players like this in, they've got, I believe, Udogie there as well. I mean, Pedro Porro in at right back, I think he signed a new deal. Brilliant. Van der Ven, if he decides to stay with Senesi, there. Danzo's obviously there. We have to wait and see, obviously, what's going on with Christian Romero. Obviously, you've got that midfield. Kulusevski still to come in. Kudus to come back. Maddison. I mean, it's a decent team. It's a very, very decent team. What they do next season, I don't know. And I think that's the point. Obviously, before you sign players, ultimately, and I think that was one of the things that I was trying to get across to people in regards to the Mateus Fernandes and Tonali, is ultimately, if I looked at those two and you asked me how good do I think they are, I think they're one of the best midfields in the Premier League. I can't see why they're two midfielders that most people would want to sign for their teams. Forget the price. Just if you could sign them for whatever price, you would sign them, right? So yeah, I definitely think when I'm looking at their team, and let's say if I just look at this now, obviously, even if you swap Balogun for Solanke and Savinho for whoever on that side, Tell or anything like that, do I look at that team and think it's a good team? Yeah, I think it's a decent team. I think it's definitely a team I expect to, I guess, finish somewhere in Europe. I don't know, Conference League or Europa League level kind of thing. Yeah, I'd say like Europa League would be like the max I would think at this current moment in time. Obviously, De Zerbi with the way he plays football, he might be able to push that up himself because his style of football might be able to allow for them. They've only got one game a week if we're just talking about the Premier League, not in European football. So they're going to have time to be able to implement the style of football that De Zerbi wants to play. So it's going to be interesting from Spurs. It's really, really going to be interesting. But I guess one of the things, as I said, mentioned before the beginning of the video about, Spurs and, potentially looking at all of this stuff and thinking, oh, you sign all these players and there's going to be expectations. And ultimately for Spurs fans, and anyway, forget us as rivals, just as Spurs fans, I always look at these things and think, don't place too much expectation on these kind of things. Like, ultimately, you're not Real Madrid, you're not Barcelona, you're not PSG, Bayern Munich. You're not teams that win all the time and, are always achieving, things at like the highest level. Even Manchester City, like you win, like everyone else ain't those teams. So when we then do these type of signings, when people start saying, yeah, you got to win the league and you got to do this, I'm like, nah, man, like we're still trying to catch up to the big boys. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, we're not on the level of the big boys. You know what I'm saying? Spurs being one of those teams, you're not on that kind of level. So placing that much expectation on them is like, I'm just like, yeah, maybe, maybe you target like Europa League and then you take it from there. Do you get what I'm trying to say? Like, I think next season, from a lot of teams, especially because they've all got different and new managers, I think the way teams are playing football is going to matter more than where they finish. Now, obviously, let's use common sense. I'm not saying you could finish 15th, but play like Barcelona. Obviously not. But I am saying within reason, I think it's going to be more about the style of football and enjoying it as opposed to where these teams obviously finish. Again, like I said, there's going to need to be give and take within that. But that's the feeling I'm getting. And obviously, maybe it's just because that's what I want to do next season, as opposed to, oh, yeah, but you got to win the league and you got to do this. And that'll be, of course, that'll be fantastic. That'll be amazing. Win a trophy. All of these things would be amazing. But the realism behind it is like, probably not going to happen. So you're going to need something else, because I just feel like otherwise next season, we're going to spend another season moaning about how rubbish the football is and, all of that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I think for Spurs at the moment, for me, they're on the right track. They're doing the right things. They're getting in the right type of players that they kind of need moving into next season. And I think they are focusing quite heavily on the profiles, on the individuals, on the kind of leadership kind of qualities that these players, are going to give for the team. Especially I do think getting in someone like Robertson, forget the player, because like I said, I don't think the player is that good. But if we're just talking in terms of what he can bring to the dressing room, I think that could potentially help to massively change and shift what's obviously be going on there. And then bringing in someone like Van Heck, who's played, under De Zerbi, knows his style of football, knows what he wants to do. Listen, I think it's going to be pretty interesting season. But let me know your thoughts on Spurs at this current moment in time. How well do you think they're going to do next season? Obviously, it's still really, really early. I know, like I said, they've been linked to so many different players. I saw Somerville, Balogun, Savini. I mean, it sounds like it's going to be a very, very, expensive summer for Spurs. So let's wait and see. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Keep the same energy. Stay blessed. And I'll catch you guys real soon.